A waitress served the same quiet customer for 3 months, never knowing he was a millionaire until one phone call changed everything. What happened next will surprise you. Before we begin, comment below which city you're watching from. And when we finish, rate this story from 0 to 10. Emma Rodriguez had been working at Corner Café for almost 2 years now, and in that time she had learned to read people like open books. The small cafe in downtown Chicago wasn't much to look at from the outside, just a weathered wooden sign, a single glass door, and windows that desperately needed cleaning. But inside it was different. Just 12 mismatched tables, each with its own personality, a temperamental espresso machine that Emma had nicknamed Old Faithful, and large windows that faced the always busy Michigan Avenue, offering a perfect view of Chicago's endless hustle. But Emma loved it there more than any fancy restaurant she'd ever dreamed of working in. She loved the smell of fresh coffee beans that hit you the moment you walked in, like a warm embrace on a cold Chicago morning. She loved the regular customers who had become like a second family, Mrs. Patterson, who came in every Tuesday for her decaf latte and always asked about Emma's mother. Jake, the construction worker who ordered the strongest coffee. They hadn't left quarters for the tip jar, even though money was tight. And old Tom, who sat in the corner booth every afternoon, nursing a single cup of black coffee while working on crossword puzzles with a pencil, so worn down it was barely functional. Most of all, Emma loved the way the afternoon sun painted golden stripes across the scratched wooden floors, transforming the humble cafe into something almost magical. It was during these golden hours that she felt most at peace, most at home, most like herself. Every morning at exactly 8:15 a.m., he would walk in. Not 8:10, not 8:20, exactly 8:15 a.m. Table 7, always table 7. Emma had started calling him Mr. Silent in her head, though she'd never dare say it out loud. He was probably in his early 40s. With salt and pepper hair that was always perfectly styled despite his casual appearance. He dressed in simple clothes that somehow managed to look expensive, dark jeans that fit just right, plain sweaters in neutral colors, leather shoes that were clearly well made but not flashy. Nothing about his appearance screamed wealth, yet there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was used to being in control. He would order the same thing every single day without fail, one black coffee. No cream, no sugar, no substitutions, and a glass of water with no ice. He would sit there for exactly 1 hour, sometimes reading the Chicago Tribune with the kind of focus that suggested he was analyzing every word, sometimes just staring out the window with an expression that Emma couldn't quite read, somewhere between thoughtful and melancholy. And he never, ever spoke to anyone beyond the absolute minimum required for ordering. "Good morning," Emma would say with her brightest smile. The same one that had gotten her this job 2 years ago. He would nod politely, a small gesture that somehow managed to be both respectful and distant. "Your usual coffee?" Another nod, sometimes accompanied by the briefest eye contact. "Have a great day." A small smile, and Emma had learned to treasure these tiny smiles, and he would leave exactly $20 on the table. Every single day. 20 crisp dollars for a coffee that cost $4 and a glass of water that was free. He must be lonely, Emma's colleague Sarah would say, watching him through the window as he walked away with measured, purposeful steps. Sarah was 28, had been working at the cafe for 3 years, and considered herself an expert on customer psychology. Rich people are always lonely. They have all that money but no real friends. Rich? Emma would laugh, wiping down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Sarah, look at his clothes. Sure, they're nice, but they're not designer. He's probably just a nice office worker who happens to like tipping well. Maybe his grandmother taught him to always tip generously or something. But there was something about him that Emma couldn't shake off, something that didn't quite fit the picture of a simple office worker. It was in the way he held himself, not with the slouched shoulders of someone who spent all day answering emails, but with the straight-back posture of someone who was used to being in charge. It was in the way his eyes seemed to notice everything, every conversation, every detail of the cafe, every person who walked in and out, like he was constantly assessing and evaluating. It was in the expensive watch that peeked out from under his sleeve when he reached for his coffee. A watch that Emma was pretty sure cost more than she made in 6 months. And most mysteriously of all, he never used a phone. In a world where everyone was constantly checking their devices, scrolling through social media, answering texts and emails even during meals, Mr. Silent never even took his phone out of his pocket. Emma had started to wonder if he even owned one. Until that Tuesday morning in November that changed everything. It had been raining heavily since before dawn, one of those relentless Chicago downpours that seemed to wash the color out of everything. The cafe was unusually quiet for a Tuesday morning, just Mr. Silent at his usual table, old Tom in his corner working on a crossword, and a young woman Emma didn't recognize, typing furiously on a laptop while her coffee grew cold. Mr. Silent had been sitting at his usual table for about 20 minutes, reading the business section of the Tribune with his typical intense focus when his phone rang. The sound cut through the cafe's peaceful atmosphere like a knife through silence. Emma was wiping down the table next to his table 6 where Mrs. Patterson usually sat when she heard it. It wasn't just any ringtone. It was the kind of sophisticated, subtle chime that spoke of expensive technology and important people. Emma had heard similar sounds in movies about Wall Street executives and powerful businessmen. Mr. Silent looked at his phone with an expression Emma had never seen before. Not reluctance. Exactly. But the look of someone who knew that answering meant stepping back into a world he was trying to escape from. He answered on the 4th ring. "Michael here," he said quietly. But his voice carried a new quality, authority, command, the unmistakable tone of someone who was used to making decisions that affected millions of dollars and thousands of people. Emma continued wiping the table, trying to mind her own business, but the cafe's acoustics meant that every word was crystal clear. Besides, after 3 months of serving this man in complete silence, hearing him speak was like discovering that a statue had suddenly come to life. "What do you mean this shipment is delayed?" His voice was different now, completely different from the polite, quiet customer she knew. This was the voice of a CEO, a leader, someone who didn't accept excuses. "We have contracts to fulfill, deadlines to meet. I don't care what excuse the manufacturing team has. Find a solution and find it now." Emma's hands stopped moving. This definitely didn't sound like an office worker. This sounded like someone who owned the office. "And what's the status on the hospital donation?" He continued, his voice softening slightly. "Good. Make sure the children's wing gets the new equipment by Friday. The kids have been waiting long enough. What? How much? 2 million. David, that's fine. Transfer it from my personal account, not the corporate fund." "This one's personal." Emma's cleaning cloth fell from her hand and landed on the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the suddenly silent cafe. $2 million, personal account, hospital donation, children's wing. The pieces of the puzzle were rearranging themselves in Emma's mind so quickly she felt dizzy. Personal accounts that could handle $2 million donations. The authority in his voice, the expensive watch, the perfectly controlled schedule, the way he carried himself. "The board meeting is at 3 p.m., right?" Michael continued, completely unaware that Emma's entire understanding of reality was crumbling and rebuilding itself 3 feet away. "Cancel it. Reschedule for tomorrow morning." "No, I don't care if the investors flew in from Tokyo. They can wait one more day." "No, I'm having my coffee. Some things are more important than business." He ended the call and immediately noticed Emma staring at him with wide eyes, her mouth slightly open in shock. For the first time in 3 months, their eyes met and held. Really met. Not the polite, distant acknowledgement of customer and server, but the direct gaze of two people who suddenly saw each other as human beings. "I'm sorry," Emma stammered, quickly bending down to pick up her cleaning cloth. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just—" "It's okay," he said, and Emma realized that his voice was gentle again. Warm and human, nothing like the commanding tone he'd used on the phone. "I know this must be confusing. Actually, I'm surprised it took this long for someone to overhear me." Emma didn't know what to say. She stood there, cloth in hand, her mind racing through everything she thought she knew about this man and finding that none of it made sense anymore. "Sit down," he said softly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, I think I owe you an explanation." Emma looked around the cafe. Tom was still absorbed in his crossword puzzle, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding a few tables away. The young woman with the laptop was wearing headphones and typing with the intensity of someone on a deadline. They were essentially alone. She sat down carefully, her heart racing not with fear but with curiosity and something else she couldn't quite identify. "My name is Michael Thompson," he said, extending his hand across the small table. "And I owe you an explanation." The name hit Emma like a lightning bolt, like a piece of information that had been floating just outside, her consciousness suddenly snapping into place. Michael Thompson. She'd seen that name in Forbes, on CNN's business reports, in the Chicago Tribune's financial section. He was the CEO of Thompson Industries, one of America's largest technology companies. The man sitting across from her, the man she'd been serving coffee to for 3 months, the man she'd thought was just a lonely office worker, was worth billions of dollars. "You single quotes, Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "You're Michael Thompson. The Michael Thompson." "Guilty as charged," Michael said with a sad smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Though most days I feel more like a fraud than a CEO." Emma blinked, trying to process this information. "I don't understand. What do you mean?" Michael took a sip of his coffee, the same black coffee he'd been ordering for 3 months, and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, where the rain was beginning to lighten. "Do you know what it's like to have everything you could ever want? More money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Houses in 6 different countries. Cars that cost more than most people's homes, but not have a single person in your life who wants to spend time with you just because they like you." Emma shook her head slowly. "Everyone who talks to me wants something," Michael continued, his voice quiet but intense. "Money, favors, business deals, investments, partnerships. My own family." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "My own family treats me like a walking ATM. My brother calls only when he needs money for another failed business venture. My sister only invites me to events when she wants to impress her friends. Even my mother. She loves me, I know she does, but every conversation somehow becomes about what I can do for this charity or that cause." Emma felt her heart tighten with unexpected sympathy. "But here," Michael gestured around the small cafe, "in this little place, I'm just another customer. You smile at me because that's who you are, not because you know my net worth. You treat me with kindness because it's natural to you, not because you're hoping for a donation to your favorite cause. For 1 hour every day, I get to be just Michael. Not Michael Thompson, CEO. Not Michael Thompson, billionaire. Just Michael." Emma studied his face, really looked at him for the first time. Behind the tired eyes, she saw something she recognized from her own mirror during the darkest days after her father's death: loneliness. Deep, bone-deep loneliness that no amount of money could cure. "So you've been pretending to be someone else?" she asked gently. "Not pretending," Michael said quickly, and Emma could hear the sincerity in his voice. "This is who I am, the real me. Michael the businessman, Michael the CEO, that's just A role I have to play, a character I put on like a costume every day. But this Michael, the one sitting here with you right now, this is who I actually am when nobody's watching." Emma found herself leaning forward, drawn into his story despite herself. "Why are you telling me this?" Michael was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in small circles on the table. "Because tomorrow is my birthday," he said finally. "I'm turning 43 tomorrow, and I realized something last night that scared me. I don't have a single person in my life who would wish me happy birthday just because they care about me. Not one. Every birthday greeting I'll get will be from employees, business associates, people who work for me or want something from me." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "And you," Michael continued, looking directly at her now, "you're the only person who's been genuinely kind to me in months, maybe years. You smile at me every morning like you're actually happy to see me. You ask if I want my usual coffee like it matters to you whether I'm comfortable. You tell me to have a great day like you actually mean it. Do you have any idea how rare that is? They sat in silence for a moment, the rain still pattering against the windows, creating a cocoon of intimacy in the busy cafe. What do you do? Michael asked suddenly, seeming to shake himself out of his melancholy. Besides working here, I mean. What's your dream? What did you want to be when you were a kid? Emma was surprised by the question and the genuine interest in his voice. My dream, everyone has one, or had one anyway. Emma looked down at her hands, thinking about dreams that felt so far away they might as well have been on another planet. I wanted to be a teacher. I was studying education at Northwestern University, but when my father got sick, she shrugged, trying to keep her voice steady. Dreams don't pay medical bills. What happened to your father? Michael's voice was gentle, careful. Cancer. Pancreatic cancer. It's one of the bad ones. The treatment was experimental, not covered by insurance. We tried everything. Fundraising, loans, selling, everything we owned. I dropped out of school to work full-time to help with the medical bills, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. Emma's voice got quieter. He died 2 years ago. Michael's expression grew serious, and Emma could see something shifting in his eyes. Not pity, but understanding. I'm so sorry. That shouldn't happen. No one should have to choose between education and family, between dreams and survival. Emma looked up at him, surprised by the passion in his voice. What if I told you there was a way to finish your education and help your family at the same time? Michael asked, leaning forward. Emma's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Michael pulled out his phone, the same expensive phone that had started this whole conversation, and made a call. David, it's me. Yes, I know it's early, and yes, I know I just told you to reschedule the board meeting. This is more important, I need you to look into establishing a scholarship program through the Thompson Foundation. Full university tuition, plus a monthly stipend for living expenses, specifically for students who had to leave school due to family medical emergencies. Yes, I want it established immediately. Today if possible. No, this isn't a publicity stunt. This is personal. Emma stared at him in shock, her mouth falling open. Mr. Thompson, you can't. Call me Michael, he said, covering the phone with his hand. And yes, I can. I absolutely can. He finished the call and looked at her with an expression that was part determination, part hope. The Thompson Foundation is establishing a scholarship program for students who had to leave university due to family circumstances. You'll be the first recipient. Emma felt the world spinning around her. I can't accept that. It's too much. I'm just I'm nobody. I'm a waitress. You're not nobody, Michael said firmly. You're someone who showed kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. You're someone who chose family over dreams, which tells me exactly what kind of person you are. This isn't charity, Emma. This is an investment. An investment in someone who I know will use this opportunity to make the world a better place. Tears started falling down Emma's cheeks before she could stop them. Why are you doing this? Michael leaned back in his chair and for a moment he looked older than his 42 years. Because 3 months ago I was seriously considering selling my company and retiring. I was tired of the business world, tired of people who only saw dollar signs when they looked at me, tired of feeling like I'd lost my soul somewhere along the way to becoming successful. I was ready to give up. What changed your mind? You did, Michael said simply. Coming here every morning. Seeing your smile, watching you treat every customer like they mattered. Mrs. Patterson with her endless stories about her grandchildren. Tom with his crossword puzzles, even the rude businessman who comes in sometimes and never says thank you. You treat everyone with the same kindness, the same respect. You reminded me why I started my company in the first place. Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve, smearing her mascara but not caring. So what happens now? Now, Michael said, standing up and leaving his usual $20 on the table. You go back to school. You become the teacher you were meant to be. And if you want, you can keep working here part-time. I'd like to keep having my coffee at table 7 if that's okay with you. Emma stood up too, her legs shaky with emotion and disbelief. Michael, I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by becoming everything you dreamed of becoming. Thank me by being the kind of teacher who changes kids' lives the way you've changed mine." The next morning, Emma was nervous as she prepared for his shift. She'd barely slept, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. Would Michael still come? Had yesterday really happened, or had she dreamed the whole thing? At exactly 8:15 a.m., he walked through the door. Table 7, same as always. But this time when Emma approached with his coffee, he was smiling. Not the small, polite smile she was used to, but a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Good morning, Emma." "Good morning, Michael." "Your usual coffee?" she asked, though she was already preparing it exactly the way he liked it. "Actually," he said, his eyes twinkling with something that looked like mischief, "I think I'll try something different today. What do you recommend?" Emma grinned, feeling lighter than she had in years. "How about a black coffee with a side of new beginnings?" "Perfect," Michael said. And Emma, "Yes?" "Happy early birthday to me." Emma laughed, a sound full of joy and hope and possibility. "Happy birthday, Michael." As she walked back to prepare his order, Emma realized that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen in the most ordinary moments. A simple conversation between a waitress and her customer had changed both their lives forever. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, Emma was back at Northwestern University, studying education during the day and working at the cafe in the evenings. The Thompson Foundation scholarship covered not just her tuition, but also her living expenses, textbooks, and even a small stipend that allowed her to send money home to her mother for the first time since her father's death. Michael still came every morning at 8:15 a.m., but their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected, a genuine friendship. He would sometimes stay longer than his usual hour, especially on slower mornings, and they would talk about everything and nothing. Emma learned that Michael had grown up poor, that his father had been a factory worker who died in an industrial accident when Michael was 16, that he built his company from nothing with a combination of brilliance, determination, and the burning desire to make sure no family went through what he's had gone through. Michael learned that Emma had always been the responsible one in her family, that she'd started working at age 14 to help with expenses, that she'd given up a full scholarship to Northwestern the first time not because the scholarship didn't cover everything, but because she couldn't bear the thought of being away from home while her father was sick. One Tuesday morning, as Emma brought Michael his coffee, he'd started experimenting with different types, lattes, cappuccinos, even the occasional mocha. She noticed he seemed unusually excited. "Good news?" she asked, setting down his cup. "The best news," Michael grinned. "Children's Memorial Hospital just called. The new wing is opening next month, and they want to name it after the donor." "That's wonderful. What are you going to call it?" "That's the thing," Michael said, pulling out an official-looking document from his briefcase. "I'm not the donor. You are." Emma stared at the paper in confusion. The Emma Rodriguez Children's Wing was printed in elegant letters at the top, with architectural drawings of a bright, colorful space designed specifically for young patients. "Michael, what did you do? Remember when you told me about your father? About how you couldn't afford his treatment?" Michael's voice was gentle. "I've been thinking about that conversation for months. So I made a donation in your name. $2 million for the children's wing, so no other family has to go through what yours did." Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "You can't keep doing things like this." "Watch me," Michael said with a mischievous smile. "Besides, there's more." "More?" Michael stood up and walked to the center of the cafe. It was a busy Tuesday morning. All 12 tables were occupied, and there was even a small line at the counter. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" The cafe gradually fell silent as all eyes turned to Michael. Emma felt her cheeks burning red with embarrassment and curiosity. 3 months ago, Michael announced to the room, I was a lonely, bitter businessman who had forgotten why I went into business in the first place. I had more money than I knew what to do with, but I'd lost sight of what really mattered. Then I met Emma Rodriguez, who showed me what real kindness looks like. Emma felt her cheeks burning even redder. "Michael, What are you doing? I'm making an announcement, he continued, speaking to the entire cafe. Emma is going to become a teacher, which means this cafe is going to lose the best waitress in Chicago. The customers murmured in agreement. Emma had indeed become beloved by everyone who frequented the cafe. She remembered their orders, asked about their families, and somehow managed to make everyone feel like they were her favorite customer. So, Michael continued, I've made a decision. I'm buying this cafe. Sarah, who had been watching from behind the counter, dropped the coffee cup she was holding. It shattered on the floor, but nobody moved to clean it up. And I'm renaming it Emma's Corner. Emma will be the manager so she can work here while she finishes her studies, and eventually we'll expand it into a chain of cafes that provide scholarships to students who need them. The cafe erupted in applause. Emma stood there in shock, unable to process what was happening. Mrs. Patterson was crying and clapping. Tom had abandoned his crossword puzzle to join the standing ovation. Even the businessman who never said thank you was smiling and applauding. Michael walked back to her and took her hands. Emma, you saved my life by showing me what it means to be human again. Let me help save other people's lives by giving them the chances they deserve. Emma looked around the cafe at Sarah beaming with pride despite the broken cup at her feet, at the customers clapping and cheering, at Michael looking at her with hope and determination and something that looked like love, not romantic love, but the love of family, of chosen family. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. The applause grew even louder. Sarah rushed over and hugged her tightly, not caring that she was getting coffee grounds all over Emma's uniform. I always knew you were special, she whispered in Emma's ear. But Michael wasn't finished. One more thing, he said, pulling out his phone. Emma, what's your mother's phone number? Why? Because I want to call her and tell her that her daughter is going to graduate university debt-free, with both an education degree and a business degree, and that she's going to help hundreds of other students do the same thing. Emma gave him the number with trembling hands. As Michael dialed, she realized that her life had become something she never could have imagined. Something bigger and more meaningful than she'd ever dared to dream. The phone rang twice before her mother answered. Hola? Mrs. Rodriguez? This is Michael Thompson, a friend of your daughter's. I'm calling to tell you that Emma is the most remarkable young woman I've ever met, and I wanted you to know that her kindness has changed my life. Emma watched as Michael explained everything to her mother, the scholarship, the cafe, the hospital wing, the plans for expansion. She could hear her mother crying on the other end of the phone, could hear her switching rapidly between English and Spanish as she tried to process what she was hearing. When he hung up, Michael smiled at Emma. She's very proud of you. She also invited me for dinner on Sunday. Are you going to go? If you'll let me. I've never had a family dinner. Emma felt her heart overflow with emotion. Michael, you're not just my friend. You're family now. 2 years later, Emma graduated Northwestern with highest honors, double majoring in education and business administration. The Thompson Foundation Scholarship Program had expanded to help over 200 students across the country. Emma's Corner had opened 3 locations across Chicago, each one providing jobs and opportunities for young people while serving as community gathering spaces. The Emma Rodriguez Children's Wing at Children's Memorial Hospital had saved dozens of lives and provided hope to countless families facing the same impossible choices Emma's family had faced. And Michael? He'd found something more valuable than all his billions combined, a family who loved him for who he was, not what he owned. He spent his Sundays at Emma's mother's house, learning to make traditional Mexican dishes and arguing politics with Emma's cousins. He'd never been happier. At Emma's graduation ceremony, as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she looked out at the audience and saw Michael and her mother sitting together, both crying with pride. Her mother was wearing a new dress, the first new dress she'd bought herself in years, and Michael was holding a sign that said, "That's my honorary daughter," in both English and Spanish. After the ceremony, Michael approached her with a small gift box. "What's this?" Emma asked. "Open it." Inside was a simple pin with the words "World's Best Teacher" engraved on it. "You start your new job next month," Michael said. "Teaching 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary, where you'll inspire the next generation of dreamers and fighters and changemakers." Emma looked up at him in amazement. "How did you—" "I may have made a recommendation, and maybe a small donation to their scholarship program for students whose families are struggling." Emma laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." "And you're incredible," Michael replied. "Now go change the world, one student at a time." As Emma pinned the small badge to her graduation gown, she thought about how her life had changed with a single overheard phone conversation. She'd learned that sometimes the most ordinary moments contain the most extraordinary possibilities. And she'd learned that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change everything. The story ends with Emma teaching her first class at Lincoln Elementary, sharing with her students the same lesson that had changed her life, that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, and that a moment of genuine kindness can transform not just their day, but their entire future. Michael still visits Emma's Corner every morning at 8:15 a.m. He still sits at table 7. But now, instead of sitting alone, he's usually surrounded by scholarship students, young entrepreneurs, and people whose lives have been touched by the kindness that started with a simple smile and a cup of coffee. And Emma? She's exactly where she always dreamed of being, making a difference in the world, one person at a time. What did you think of Emma and Michael's story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and rate this story from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our heartwarming stories.